Chapter 1. Cognitive Biases. Human beings like to imagine that they see the world clearly. We assume that our opinions are the result of careful reasoning, that our conclusions are guided by evidence, and that when we disagree with others, it is usually because they are misinformed. But the truth is more complicated. Every thought we have passes through a set of invisible mental filters known as cognitive biases. These biases are not signs of stupidity. In fact, they are the brain's attempt to be efficient. The human mind is constantly overwhelmed by information, news, conversations, memories, social signals, advertisements, and countless tiny decisions. If we analyzed every piece of information with perfect logic, we would barely function. So the brain cheats. It uses shortcuts. It fills in gaps. It simplifies complex realities into manageable stories. Most of the time, these shortcuts help us move quickly through the world. But sometimes they distort reality in ways that quietly shape our beliefs, our decisions, and even the direction of societies. One of the most powerful of these filters is confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the mind's tendency to search for, remember, and interpret information in ways that support what we already believe. Once an idea settles in our mind, the brain begins acting less like a neutral scientist and more like a defense lawyer, selecting evidence that strengthens the case while ignoring evidence that weakens it. We rarely notice this happening. That is what makes it so powerful. Imagine a man named Daniel. Daniel is not unintelligent. He has a stable job, reads the news regularly, and considers himself well informed about the world. One evening, he reads an article online claiming that a particular economic policy is destroying small businesses. The article is dramatic. It contains statistics, interviews, and bold headlines. It also aligns with something Daniel has felt for a while, that the system is unfair. His brain registers something important in that moment: agreement. The agreement feels good. It creates a sense of clarity and validation. So Daniel shares the article with friends and continues reading similar sources. Over the next few weeks, something subtle happens. When Daniel sees articles that support the same narrative, he reads them carefully. He remembers their statistics. He shares them online. When he encounters articles that contradict the claim, he reacts differently. Perhaps the source seems biased. Maybe the author seems arrogant. Maybe the numbers feel suspicious. Without consciously deciding to do so, he dismisses the information more quickly. Months later, Daniel is completely convinced that the policy is disastrous. Yet if someone else reviewed the entire body of evidence, including the studies Daniel ignored, they might reach a more nuanced conclusion. Daniel is not lying. He is not intentionally ignoring facts. His brain is simply doing what human brains evolved to do, protecting a coherent story. Now imagine millions of Daniels. Each person is gathering evidence that supports their worldview. Each person is surrounded by friends, media outlets, and online communities that reinforce those same beliefs. The result is not merely disagreement, it is parallel realities. Groups become certain that they alone possess the truth while their opponents must be ignorant, dishonest, or irrational. Dialogue becomes difficult because both sides believe the evidence is overwhelmingly in their favor. In reality, both sides are often looking at different slices of information through different cognitive filters. Cognitive biases influence nearly every major domain of life. They shape political decisions, financial bubbles, medical misinformation, workplace conflicts, and social polarization. Entire industries, from advertising to social media algorithms, quietly rely on these mental tendencies. When people say the world feels more divided than ever, cognitive biases are often part of the explanation, but understanding them also offers a path forward. If there were a single practical rule to counteract confirmation bias, it might sound like this: actively search for the strongest argument against your own belief. This sounds simple, but it is psychologically difficult. Our instincts push us toward agreement, not contradiction. Seeking opposing views can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. Yet this habit has remarkable effects. When individuals deliberately examine opposing evidence, they become less dogmatic and more accurate in their judgments. Conversations become less about winning and more about understanding. Complex issues reveal nuance instead of collapsing into slogans. In other words, intellectual humility begins to replace intellectual combat. Imagine if more citizens approached news, science, politics, and social issues with a simple internal question: what evidence would prove me wrong? The world would not suddenly become free of disagreement, but discussions would become more grounded in curiosity than certainty. And that small shift from defending beliefs to investigating them has the power to transform not only how we think, but how we live together. Because the first step toward clearer thinking is not proving others wrong. It is recognizing that the mind we trust most, our own, is quietly biased in ways we rarely see.